Hi, this is Jaya. In this video, we shall see the summary of Genius and Taste by Irving Babbitt. In Roderick Random, the poet Melopone delivers a resourceful speech upon the difference between genius and taste. Mr. Spingarn, in his creative criticism, views on genius and taste as ultra-modern, which takes us back to the 18th century. Voltaire defined genius as judicious imitation. Voltaire says that in the whole world, a few men of genius are mostly found in Paris. Voltaire views genius and taste as very vivid and vital things, but they both operate within the limits imposed by the neoclassic doctrine of imitation, which is a doctrine which suffered from flaw of formalism. Some began to oppose the neoclassical harping judgment and imitation as a plea for imagination and originality. The genius who emerged at this time had a strong leaning towards primitivism. According to the older school, art aims not at the expression of the individual but at the universal, the grandeur generality. On the contrary, Edward Young says genius resides in one's ultimate idiosyncrasy, which makes every man different from his fellows. If one wishes to be a creator and not a mechanical imitator, one should submit to no constraint upon one's imagination. Young hints that many geniuses are those who could neither write nor read. Diderot says genius calls for something enormous, primitive, and barbaric. According to the primitivist, if genius is something purely expressive, a spontaneous temperamental overflow than taste, according to Babbitt, is at the opposite pole from the taste of the neoclassicist. Mr. Spingarn says that critics should ask what the creator aimed to do and whether the aim is intrinsically worthwhile. He should value the creation with reference to some standard set both above his own temperament and that of the creator. On the contrary, according to the primitivist, the genius has simply to let himself go both imaginatively and emotionally, and says that the whole business of the critic is to perceive so keen an impression from the resulting expression. Thus, genius and taste are one. Taste has been defined as a man's literary consciousness. Mr. Spingarn says fundamentally the creative and critical instincts are one and the same. A.W. Schlegel, in his Berlin lectures, protests against a fault-finding criticism that looked upon genius as the evil principle and wished to subordinate it to the negative principle. So, genius and taste are indivisibly one. If the creator has merely to get his own uniqueness expressed, then why the critic should be more disinterested? The ultimate implications of the impressionist view have been worked out by Oscar Wilde in his The Critic as Artist, and states that criticism is the only civilized form of autobiography. Mr. Spingarn is craving for an indeterminate vagabondage of imagination and emotion. The neoclassicists hope to gain the grandeur of generality by judicious imitation. Yet Voltaire declared that illusion is the queen of the heart. Aristotle says the poets are superior to historians. They reveal the actual truth in their poems. So he strongly accepts that the poet must be a master of illusion. Goethe points out that the best art gives the illusion of a higher reality. Imitation in the theory of Aristotle and the practice of Sophocles or Phidias is not merely judicious but creative because it is imaginative. For the Greek, genius should have imaginative perception with a universal point of view. Homer praises Aristotle as the greatest of poets because he never entertains readers, but he is merely an imitator. Shakespeare is one of the most imaginative of men. His imagination is disciplined to reality. Greek sense is not to preach or to agitate problems, but to see life with imaginative wholeness. Mr. Spingarn holds that the creator should not submit to truth and reality, but should simply let himself go emotionally and imaginatively. He should get rid of inner and outer inhibitions. On the contrary, Mr. Spingarn credits the creator of this type with a vision of reality and spiritual exaltation. He says that if one puts on no check on his imagination and at the same time convinced of his spiritual exaltation is in a divine madness. In its mildest form, this whole theory of genius and taste encourages conceit in its more advanced forms, megalomania. Mr. Spingarn's exhortation to get rid of both inner and outer inhibitions and let oneself follow the lines of least resistance and be a genius. The doctrine of imitation means that one needs to look up to some standard set above one's ordinary self. Mr. Spingarn says to be modern, it should be positive and experimental in one's attitude towards life. Dr. Johnson defines genius as only mind of large general power accidentally determined to some particular direction. The critic will begin to have taste only when he refers the creative expression and impression of it to some standard. If this standard is to be purified, it must not be merely traditional but must be ethical. Mr. Spingarn says that the opening night of the international exhibition was one of the most adventures that he had ever experienced. Napoleon proclaims that imagination governs the world. Aristotelian sense, the imagination does not wander aimlessly but is at work in the service of supersensuous truth, that it is not given to man to seize directly, and that the result is the illusion of a high reality. Babbitt establishes the opinion that literature must help us recognize the reality of evil and the necessity of controlling our impulses, and argues that literature that does not abide by standards leads to self-indulgence and moral degeneration. And here ends a summary. If you have anything more to add on to what I have said, please write it in the comment box. Like the video, share with your friends, and if you have not subscribed my channel, please subscribe and support. Thank you.